G'day ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Draw with Jazza. I'm Jazza, and in the spirit of Halloween, this video is going to be dedicated to drawing zombies. Now before I start, for those of you who are interested and may have missed the announcement, I announced a competition, a challenge of the month for this month, and it's only halfway through the month, so you've got a bit of time left to zombify a person or a character or a video game character or something like that. Now I will clarify to those of you who have been involved in the competition and have asked me the questions, I wasn't very clear. It's meant to be an illustration, so you're not kind of photoshopping a photo of someone, you're drawing something from scratch. Either way, if you're interested and missed the announcement, there is a link on the screen and in the description. Otherwise, we're going to get started. So as you can see here, I've got a bit of a distorted looking figure. This is a lady and she is not in a normal sort of pose. This is how I'm starting off. These are my construction lines to my zombie lady. I'm going to draw 3 different zombies today, kind of showcasing 3 different things you can keep in mind when you're drawing zombies and ways to make them more kind of nifty and cool looking. So the first technique that we're going to talk about is disfiguring the proportions and the pose of the person. So as you can see, the head is on this angle, kind of like if that's the center line, where the shoulders is on a very opposing angle. Kind of like not only unbalanced, but the fact that we never hold our bodies in this sort of way. It's like something is wrong. So that's a very cool immediate way of kind of showing that these zombies are zombies. The next thing is we're going to talk about some of the subtle things that you can do to the face and the features to show that it's a zombie. So for example, if I zoom into the eyes here, normally when I draw an eye, I would draw a highlight and fill in this area here, and that's a pretty normal eye. For a zombie, I would do a really thin line around the outside. I wouldn't even fully close it. And for the inside, I'd just kind of do this really light ring. Another thing you can do to get a really cool zombie-like look is to simply have a little dot as the pupil. And that really shows kind of like a dead look inside the character's eye. It's really kind of cool. Otherwise, I'd kind of go around the rest of the features of the eye as normal. So go in and draw the eyelashes, but then we're going to accentuate a few other things. So we're going to draw a really thin line around the very bottom of the eye, and then we're going to show a really fine sort of line at the bottom here for the bags of the eyes. So that's a really quick and simple way to kind of make some tweaks to the eye to make it zombie-like. Everything else on the face is fairly normal until we start ripping things apart, and we're going to talk about that with our next zombie. But for this, it's more about the disfigurement of the pose. Now the reason we do things like bags of the eyes and that fine line under the lower eyelid is because zombies are dead people, and when someone has been dead for a period of time, their body starts to decay, and so we're doing things like by getting rid of the fat in the skin and having the skin sag and go wrinkly. That kind of shows that there's a bit of decomposition happening. But the other thing to keep in mind too is that while we want them to look cool and look sort of dying and like zombies, we also need to keep a bit of humanity in them. That's what really makes zombies scary, is that we can look at them and see that they were once something. Element of relatability with these zombies, like something is particularly freaky about a child zombie, because in reality we would never harm it and it would never harm us, but in a world of zombies, a child zombie is kind of the most unsettling. Now, like I said, this zombie is going to be an example of disfiguring the pose, and something that you can do this with is with the mouth. So without necessarily tearing chunks off and things like that, we can change and make things a little bit more askew than they normally would be. So for example, if we go for a bit of a symmetry and bring the upper lip higher than we normally would have it, and then have the lower lip on the other side go a bit lower than we would normally have it. That way we can do things like showing the gums on the opposing corners of the mouth, and we start to get this kind of weird, distorted, contorted look that we're going for. So as you can see, I've pulled this edge up and this edge down, and then we want the lips to follow that same sort of thing. So we have the top lip kind of pull up like this, and the lower lip's gonna like droop. And we really get this sense of asymmetry, everything kind of being pulled askew. And if I hide my guidelines there, you can see that we've got this really freaky looking face, and without necessarily showing a lighter skin color or blood or, you know, other things that would be very quickly identifiable as zombies, we're starting to get something that looks quite dead and quite unsettling. And the other reason that doing a strange kind of distorted mouth mouth like this works quite well is because in this case, this is like a pretty girl zombie, and a pretty girl would never hold her face like that. So it's like just something that makes people double take and go, ugh. So we've kind of got the essentials of our zombie character here. And if I hide the construction work, you can see that we've got the basics in there. I think the neck's a little bit too masculine, so I'm just going to bring that in. And then the final thing I'm going to do is the hair, just really rough in some hair, and let's give her a bit of a fringe kind of coming around the side here. And again, you don't want the hair to be too neat because this zombie was perhaps once a girl who would have looked after her hair, but in this case, she is dead and doesn't give a damn about anything but eating your brains. So, really kind of roughing it up and not worrying about if it goes about weirdly on one angle, in fact, kind of working with that sort of idea. Now we're going to get to colouring this later to use a few more techniques that will really make it kind of much more zombie-like, but at the moment you can see with just some simple sort of line work and accentuated features of the face and the pose, we can get a very zombie-esque look with our character very quickly, just by disfiguring their pose and making things look a little contorted and weird. So that's the first example. The next example and the next technique we're going to use is going to be ripping things up a bit. So this is the character's base of a face, the face base that I've got here, just this average dude, and I'm going to take chunks out of him. Now, something that you kind of need to be somewhat familiar with when doing this is a bit of anatomy on the character. So you kind of need to know how the skeleton looks, what the skull underneath the face will look like, because I might grab, let's say, this area here and just totally rip everything out except for the eyeball. I might also do the same for everything below the nose line and just have kind of the jaw and the blood and stuff draining there. So let's give that a go. So we'll start off with the normal eye over here. So just draw our lines and draw the normal eye, and this is going to be kind of like creating a sense of opposition between this and the other eye, which is going to be totally exposed and ripped up. So once again, drawing really thin lines to indicate bags under the eyes, sagging skin, and then really thin, small, unsettling pupils. And then with this other eye, we're going to get rid of a whole chunk. So if I draw the edge of the head up to here, and then just start to really just draw chunks missing from there, the whole eyeball is going to be exposed like this. And then before I draw the details of the eye, I'm going to continue to refine where the skin is going to go. So I'm going to have it wrap up to the cheek, and then the skin at the bottom of the cheek here is going to kind of flop over. Now the next thing I'm going to do is draw the eyeball, and when I say the eyeball, I mean no skin on the top or bottom, just the ball of the eye. And I'm going to rough out where the actual skull would go that would hold in the eyeball. And then I'm roughing in the pupil, the zombie-like pupil of the eye, and then giving a nice dark edge at the bottom of the eyeball. So there you go. If I hide my construction lines, you can see that we've got this immediate kind of opposition between these two eyes. One is ripped open and gaping, bits of flesh dangling, and we're going to draw some blood and all that stuff later, but for now, you kind of get what I'm going for. And then I'm going to draw the rest of the nose and just keep some things normal and keep some things really weird and funky looking. So we're going to do the same thing with the mouth. We're going to really rip up everything on the bottom of the jaw. So I'm going to draw the top lip as normal, just like he's got a normal thing going on, just a normal dude. And then we're just going to rip like this and have the edges right near the end where the jagged bit kind of ends, like right around here and right around here. Have them pop out a bit because the flesh is kind of like flailing out. And then the bottom of the jaw, we're going to draw the teeth, and we're just going to draw the completely exposed skeleton. So the interesting thing about drawing the exposed skeleton is because we have the bone, but we also have the muscle and the blood and all the dangly bits of flesh that are kind of remaining and stuff. So we've kind of got to make concession for all these things. So for example, at the bottom of the face, I'm going to draw all this dangling stuff like this. Not too symmetrical, we've got to make it nice and uneven and a bit unsettling, just to indicate that that's where perhaps the skin has been ripped off and is dangling. Everything's pretty normal otherwise because we've got these two features. So we don't want to overdo it with this one. Let's just kind of leave it so that we've got those things that are happening and then everything else is kind of normal. And that way we have two features, the eye and the mouth, that are really accentuated and become really dead and ripped up and zombie-like. Now, of course, when there's color in these illustrations, which we're going to address at the very end of the tutorial, there's going to be a lot more kind of showing the zombiness of it. But it's interesting and kind of useful to approach just the line work and just this sort of stuff first, because then we get a very clear idea of where things are going and what works and what makes it look good, before the color, which is going to add a lot of kind of pizzazz, really make it jump out and work really well. But if we get this stuff working, the line stuff working first, everything after that is just going to be pie. So there you go, whipped up some hair on this dude, just give him a few lines on the side of his head, and there we go. Let's draw a few little things there. So that is our second zombie character, and the focus of this approach was to really show that you can kind of rip pieces off, chunks off, and if I wanted to, I could rip even more from the bottom of his face and just get rid of his lower jaw completely, or do things like remove limbs and that sort of thing. Being really fearless with how much you break down your zombies is really quite a useful technique to make something look really dead and zombie-like and kind of scary. So the very last zombie we're going to draw, and the last technique I'm going to talk about, is mixing in character and story and kind of a history on the zombie that will make it kind of more interesting and more scary. So like I said, a child zombie can be really freaky. In this situation, I'm going to draw a clown zombie, because clowns themselves are freaky, but an undead clown marching towards you is going to be even freakier. So I've got all my construction work here of the head. The next thing I'm going to do is accentuate features that are going to be clown features. So all the normal stuff is going to come first. Now, something else you can do when you're drawing zombie eyes is you can really draw pretty much no pupil or anything like that in the middle of the eyes. You can just do something really light and simple like that. And without the construction work, you can see that even if I just draw nothing in the center and just draw that as the eye, later on when I get to color, I can just keep it almost nearly white with a slight bit of yellow in it, and that alone will just be a really cool effective zombie eye, because it shows it very empty and very dead. So I'm going to draw the hair of this clown to be like a little clown afro that a party clown might wear, but it's going to be unkempt. So where I might normally just kind of draw the funky look of the clown afro, I'm going to have like bits that are frayed and sticking out, and really just mess around with it and make it look a bit ragged. So now we're going to really start adding features that say this is a clown. So things like this weird clown-like collar, even one of those silly clown flowers that squirt water at you as a prank. And let's get rid of the main normal nose, and let's add a clown nose at the end of his nose, like this. So now if I hide my construction lines and zoom out a bit, you can see that everything's sort of coming together. It's starting to look like a bit of a zombie clown. So we're going to keep going and adding a few things here and there to really bring this character out. So one thing I'm going to do is, like with my second zombie example, I'm going to take a chunk out of it. So I'm just going to rip the flesh in this lower lip, just completely draw the bottom of the teeth like this, and then have the flesh kind of hanging from itself like that. And there you go, just quite simply like that, we're already getting a chunk in, and we're going to start to add a bit of clown makeup, but most of it's going to be done with the color. I'm just going to kind of outline a shape here along the eyes, just really lightly, and I'm going to outline a big smiley mouth on the clown like this. So that's as much as I'm going to do before I get to the color, which I'm going to start now, but I'm going to go back to the first zombie. So this is our zombie lady, and what I'm going to do is very quickly, the snap of a finger, color everything. Ready, 1, 2, bam, there you go, all colored in. I love that Photoshop feature. Just kidding. Of course, I just painted it and sped it up. I want to now talk about how you can work with color and do different things with your coloring in to make them look really cool and zombie-ish. So I've just done a really basic color scheme, just your general go-to colors for skin or hair or things like that. So now I'm going to talk about things that you can add or change to really make it more undead and interesting. So the first things first, if we get our skin color here, I want to make it much lighter and add a tint of green by just moving the slider very slightly up. Okay, so it'll be more yellow than it will be pink. So if I do that and then color in the whole thing, you can see how immediately we've got a much more dead-like looking flesh color. The next thing I'm going to do is that same color I'm going to bring down to be a bit darker and bring it slightly closer again to that yellow, and I'm going to really fill in the eye area like this. So the darker the eyes, the scarier something often is. So if we kind of fill in that area, make it nice and shaded in, almost like they've got like black eyes, then that tends to look pretty cool. And you can accentuate this quite a bit by just going really, really dark, but getting a smaller brush and just going right around the very edge of the eyes themselves. And this can really make it pop. The next thing I'm going to do is change the colored area of the eyes themselves. So if I get my eyedropper and select that eye color, I'm going to bring it up to a much lighter color and really make it closer to yellow. And then if I just fill in the middle there and kind of gradient it out a bit, it already looks quite freaky. So there you go. There are a few things that I've done with the color to make it a bit interesting. I'm also just going to get a very light kind of orange and just fill in the lips just very slightly, just to show that she once had lipstick. Now, the last thing I'm going to do with color is do blood, but I'm going to leave that to the very last and do all of them at once. So as you can see there, just changing the skin tone to a very dead sort of tone, and then working with shadows in the eyes and changing the colors of the eyes themselves to look more diseased and decrepit, we can get a really cool zombie-ish look. Now with this dude, we're going to do the same thing. Let's select his skin color. We'll bring it up to a lighter color and bring it closer to that yellow dead color. And then when I color that in, you can see how very quickly he already looks much more dead. And then I'm going to do the same thing that I did with my lady friend and really bring in the shadows around the eyes and then shade roughly throughout the piece. So like I said, once again, right around the bags of the eye and the eye itself, we can accentuate the dead look by making it nice and dark. The next thing I'm going to change is that the skeleton area where the bone is showing is just way too bleached and clean. So I'm actually going to select a blood color, like a really rich red, and I'm going to make everything closest to the blood area that rich red color and kind of fade it out up until where we get to like the teeth, where they wouldn't be covered in blood normally anyway. We kind of fade it out towards that. The eyes though, for example, will all be completely red because all that bone has been connected to muscle and tissue and all the stuff that will bleed when ripped away. So we actually don't want much bone color showing. And then once again, like we did with our lady friend, select the color of the eyes and then go much lighter and add a tint of yellow in there, and then just kind of make that nice and dead looking by doing that in both eyes. So with the same techniques applied with color that we did with the girl in regards to skin color and eye color, we can make him look much more zombie-like, but then also in working with exposed bone, make sure that we have a lot of blood involved there as well. And then our final zombie is this charming clown fellow, and first things first, let's paint his clown makeup, because this is going to be a bit of fun. Let's give the stars around his eyes that white paint that clowns often have, because that will accentuate his eyes, and then we can go kind of like a darker white with like a bit of a warmer tint to it, and really use this bleached area and go darker and really make these eyes pop out. Next, I'm going to go with a bright orange and do this area around his mouth. That's going to be indicating his smile. We want a really strong color here because it's going to serve to silhouette the fake smile shape. So make it nice and strong to stand out. And then of course we want a really nice bright red for the clown nose. With this guy's eyes, I'm going to go for a really bright but pale sort of deathly yellow and just fill in the inside a little bit. And that's really all I'm going to do with this guy, because the blood is going to add a lot and the makeup already adds a lot. So we're going to start off with the first lady zombie that we drew, and what we're going to do to add the blood is first select a color. Now we don't want like a bright red blood color. We actually want something kind of like mid to even a very dark red. So with this dark color, if we start to just kind of paint in where we think the blood will go, and so for example on this lady, she will have eaten someone's brains, so let's have the blood really smeared down her front and dripping down her torso. So it's going to look a little weird if you just kind of paint it straight on like this, but if you want to maintain the shading work that you've done on the character so far, you do it on a layer above, then make sure you change the blend mode of the layer to something like linear burn. So you'll notice that the difference between normal and linear burn is it kind of shows the layers underneath and some of the shading underneath, and so it makes the red a bit more transparent, and we can actually bring the layers transparency down to, let's say, 95, and that way we can essentially just paint anywhere and it'll show blood in a really nice sort of way, and it'll look quite cool. But we don't want to go over the top. What we do want to do is make it look kind of grotesque, but without being silly. So what we're going to want to do is every now and then we're going to add a smear, have some areas that are patchy a bit. If I get a really big brush size and just kind of dot around a bit, we get this cool sort of blotched effect. Now I'm using custom brushes. This is the Lush Oil brush and it's from Custom Pack by Kyle T. Webster. And there you go, very quickly I've added a whole bunch of blood to this zombie, and you can see how with and without the blood it makes a big impact on the overall zombie-like nature of the zombies. So it really is a cool thing to add. So I'm going to do the same thing on this dude with a layer on linear burn with 90-ish% opacity, 94, 3%, whatever. Just kind of painting in this blood, and we really want to cover areas like everywhere where we've had flesh ripped open. We're going to have everything kind of flowing down from there, and then up along the top of his flesh here. And then of course, with all his flesh being ripped apart and stuff, we're going to have a lot of blotches and smears on the face because blood is wet, and in the midst of all of that happening, things would have been ripped up and blood would have been thrown around. So there you go, very quickly, like I said, with and without makes a huge impact on the zombie that you draw. And then the final one, and my personal favorite, is this clown dude. So once again, linear burn, opacity down a bit, and we're going to start drawing the blood on this clown zombie. So you can see how really quickly this blood stuff adds a huge amount of grit to the zombies that we draw. So I'm going to draw some more blood in here in this wig area and this head area, as if he took a massive hit to the head at one point. And what we can also do is do things like have smears and drips flowing down the body and down the face. And there you go, with and without, we have a clown zombie who looks pretty freaky. I hope this tutorial has been enjoyable to you and that you've taken a few things that you find interesting. Make sure if you're interested to check out the Photoshop file, you can check out the link in the description which goes to the reference file, which is for free for you to download. So check that out. Thanks again for watching, and until next time, ladies and gentlemen, I'll see you later.
Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, subscribe to my channel to see new content every week. Check out more of my stuff by clicking the annotations over there. You can get the reference files for this tutorial by clicking the link in the description, and if you want the reference files for all the tutorials I've ever made, check out the tutorial archive. If you're looking for a great place to collaborate, explore, or share your own content, head over to newgrounds.com. That's it for now, and until next time, see you later.